Hey guys, Sophie here. Today we're going to do a M plus rotation guide for Resto Druid. This one might be kind of brief because there are a lot of guides that you can find out there for Resto Druid because a lot of the high-end players tend to main Resto Druid, so I'm just going to do a short guide on this because I'm planning on doing one for each of the healing specs, so I might as well just touch on Druid as it is one of my mains, but this one will probably be a little bit more brief than the Resto Shaman one, just because there's a lot of resources out there for people who play Resto Druid. So first we're going to talk about the healing rotation for Resto Druid because it's pretty simple. It's pretty much just keep your hots on your targets at all time, put Life Bloom on yourself so that your heals heal faster. Use Iron Bark on your tank when they're taking a lot of damage. Use your Buckskin on yourself when you're taking a lot of damage. And then in boss fights, you're kind of using your travel forms to reduce your damage taken by going in bear form. If you're trying to get around faster, you're going in cat form. If you're going to be doing extra damage, depending on your affinity, you're either going to be in boomkin form or you're going to be in cat form. The playstyle of Resto Druid is kind of simple. Like, to me, it's one of the easiest specs to pick out for like new players. And it's quite forgiving because you're going to have hots on your team at all times. So pretty much your team is going to be passively healing while you have the chance to do damage. So we'll start by talking about your hots. So you're going to have rejuve on almost everybody, mainly at all times, or when they're going to be taking damage. You're going to have Cenarian Ward on your tank if you are running that as a talent. Then you're going to use Wild Growth as your AoE heal. For let's say when 3 people taking damage, you just press Wild Growth. Now the thing about Life Bloom is you can put Life Bloom on. I tend to sometimes rotate between putting Life Bloom on my tank when, say we're doing a certain pull and the only person who's really taking damage is my tank. That will be when Life Bloom will probably go on my tank over myself. But then again, that's a little bit hard to say when you should do it. It's kind of just a feel it out. If you need your hots to tick faster, you gotta put it on yourself if you've got hots on multiple people. But if your tank is taking a lot of damage, I tend to just Life Bloom my tank. Like right here, my tank is like the only person who's taking damage. So as you can see, I've got Sen Ward, Rejuve, Wild Growth, and Life Bloom, and an Efflo down. And I've put my Vortex down. That's what I'm going to talk about later, is how good. Maybe it wasn't so good because my tank walked out of range and then targeted my Warlock. But for instance, the thing about Resto Druid is it has incredibly powerful healing. It has fantastic ad control or mob control, and it has really good defensives. So the one thing I find about Resto Druid is that for new players it's pretty kind. Like if you're the kind of player who might take extra damage just because you don't know the dungeons, you don't know what each ability does, if you ever think you're going to take damage or you're like, oh no, I'm accidentally standing in the swirly, always just go into beer form, reduce your damage taken. So that's something that's pretty kind about Druid. It has so many ways for you to keep yourself alive. I run renewal trait, so that gives me an extra heal that I can run. That like a self heal that I can use in any of my forms if I happen to take super random damage at any time. And then you have your own bark skin for yourself and your bear form. We're going to talk about Efflo. Now, when I talked about healing rain, I said it was kind of situational when I put it down. I tend to keep Efflo down, like, if I can't get it on my entire group, I tend to put it in range. Like, if I've got, like, in this case, a Shadow Priest, a Warlock, and myself, I'll tend to put it in range because I have the talent that Spring Blossoms, which does more healing, like, over time for people standing in your Efflo. So, like, if you think you're going to get more value, put it in ranged if you're running with double range and yourself and your boomkin affinity, because that it's not quite like healing rain. It's a little bit more effective than healing rain in my terms or in my eyes, and people tend to want to stand on your Efflo. So like on boss fights I'll always have Efflo down. Sometimes when I'm just fighting I don't know, certain mobs, I don't tend to have it down, which I probably should. Because it's not a lot of mana and it's a really good, healing spell to put down. Tranquility is your big AoE heal, which is an incredible spell. I love Tranquility. It's perfect for bursting. It's perfect for crazy amounts of, AoE damage. Sorry, I'm kind of sick, so if you hear me coughing a lot, I'm so sorry. yeah, it's a great spell. I think Resto Druid's like Mythic Plus healing is just so good. The fact that you can have hots on everybody, you've got Wild Growth, you've got Tranquility, you've got great defensives, you know, you've got great like kiting potential for your tank. It's just such a fun spec to play in my eyes. So we're going to talk a little bit about the control that you have. So if you have Feral Affinity, you've got, I think it's Maim is how you say it, Mime maybe, I don't know. That's a single target stun. You have, if you're talented into it, you have Mighty Bash too, but I'm not. You have Vortex, you have Typhoon if you're booming affinity. And these, you know, things, I'm so sorry, give you the ability to kite your mobs. Like in case maybe you have a tank who's, you know, taking a lot of damage, you can put down Vortex, and when he's kiting the mobs which are following him, they'll snap back to that spot. Or like even if you have Typhoon and your tank's taking damage, you can knock the ads back and he can just continue to kite. So Resto Druid comes with a lot of tools to help your group, and I think that's also why it's played so much in, you know, M+, is just because it has so many things. It has B-Res, obviously. It probably has some of the strongest defensives for, you know, yourself and someone else in the key, and like your cat form, like your movement as Druid is just incredible. You know, travel form is quick and easy. You've got your cat form, you've got Stampeding Roar, you've got your dash. You have Innervate. Innervate is a fantastic spell which helps you get mana back, so when you're on really high tyrannical bosses and you start going towards the end, you can just pop your, you know, Innervate and get your mana back and cast for free. Well, not all your mana back, but you know what I mean. So yeah, Resto Druid's just overall a fantastic healer. I probably won't go into much more detail because there are a lot of guides out there that, you know, if you really want to know some min-maxy ways to heal a group, there's a guide out there for it. But we'll talk a little bit about the damage rotation. Now, you keep Moonfire, Sunfire on all targets at all times. I am currently running Boomkin Affinity, which I don't love. I miss Feral Affinity more. But when I'm in Boomkin Affinity, on boss fights, I'm going to pop Heart of the Wild, and then I'm just going to absolutely pump. So it's going to be Moonfire, Sunfire, Lunar Strike, Solar Rest, Star Surge, and I'm just going to be absolutely pumping into the boss. Now, if you're Feral Affinity, on the other hand, you're going to have Rake and Rip on the target. You're going to be spamming Shred to get your combo points, and when you're at max combo points, you're going to be pressing your Ferocious Bite. And then if you're in the middle of AoE packs, you know, you can put your like dots on some targets, so you're like Rake and Rip, and then you can be spamming Swipe, and then on combo points, you're going to use your Ferocious Bite. Now that's a super easy breakdown, but it's like, make sure that if you are going into, you know, Feral Affinity and you're in cat form, try and get Moonfire and Sunfire on the targets, because that's just a little bit extra damage. Don't just go straight into cat form and then start pumping. So like here, I'm not sure whether, yeah, okay, so I've got my Moonfire, Sunfire on the target, and then I'm, you know, putting my dots on the target, spamming Shred here, and then I'll Ferocious Bite with my maximum combo points. I don't tend to use Rip when I have max combo points. It just feels a little bit awkward. Ferocious Bite is just so much better as like a combo point spender. But also, now that you have Maim, I think it is, again, I don't know how to say it, that's also a combo point spender, so you just have to be careful of that when you're, you know, you're trying to use it, and if you don't have any combo points, you won't be able to press it. But yeah, people keep asking me like, oh, is Boomkin Affinity better? And to be fair, Typhoon is such a strong spell that it's the only reason I actually run Boomkin Affinity, because I like Feral Affinity so much better. So it's kind of personal preference. If you value Typhoon like really highly in M+, then you kind of want to be, you know, running Boomkin Affinity. That's pretty much the damage breakdown. I tend to just say to people, like, you know, if you are running Feral Affinity, and let's just say for some reason you can't hit the target, try to make sure you always keep your dots up and spam Solar Wrath. Solar Wrath spam's not particularly fun, but it does do a decent amount of damage. Like, as you can see here, I can't really go in there because I'm kiting the shark, so I'm just spamming Solar Wrath. The more damage that you can do, even if you can't get into your current affinity, it's fine. Like, that's the way that Resto Druid kind of works. Keep your hots, spam whatever. I think the only thing I want to talk about is just try and use your forms as much as you can. Like, use your stampeding roar whenever you can, and if you ever think you're gonna take damage, try and be in bear form. Just that little bit of extra reduction is really nice for you. You know, and helps a little bit maybe if you're just taking extra damage that you maybe shouldn't be. But also, the thing with Ironbark is it's now on a longer CD, so you're gonna just have to get a feel for it. Some people have asked me, like, oh, how do you know when to use it? Either if you know your tank, a good thing I say to people pugging is try and find a tank that you like to run with, because if you can communicate with your tank when they want Ironbark or when they maybe want, you know, like Life Cocoon or Paints Up, it changes the way that the dungeon is if you know your tank. But if you don't know your tank, the best thing to do is to know your dungeons. Because once you know the dungeons, you know what kind of packs are doing what kind of damage, and then you can kind of, you know, gauge what packs are really dangerous for your tank. And if you don't know your tank and you don't know maybe how that tank spec plays, it's a little bit harder for you. So like I tend to say to people, okay, let's say you've used Ironbark, then it's your job on the other heavy packs if it's not back up. Put down a Vortex, use your Typhoon, try and help control these mobs just in case, you know, you don't have a defensive for your tank for any reason. And then it's kind of on you to just, you know, help your tank gather themselves when they're taking crazy AoE. But yeah, I think that's pretty much my guide. Sorry it was kind of short, but there are so many guides for Resto Druid, and because I'm currently just trying to get, you know, one out for each of the specs, I thought I can't really afford to just not do Resto Druid, so this is just like an in and out really quick video. But yeah, as I said, try and keep your hots on your targets at all times. It just saves your butt, you know, in the long run. Even if you're not going to put them on everyone, try and put them on your melee, your tank, and yourself. Because in keys, they're the people taking the most damage. I say this in every video, but I always put Rejuve on my tank, my melee DPS, and myself. Life Bloom on myself, Sin Ward on my tank, Wild Growth when you need AoE healing. And that's pretty much it. Resto Druid's pretty simple, so yeah. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the description. No, that's not the one. Put it in the comments. But yeah. Oh, I should probably talk about the talents. I totally forgot. Don't worry, we're talking about talents. That's why this video is so short. Okay, so for the talents, I run Cenarian Ward. It's just the best in this row. Nourish is a bit weird. I haven't, you know, tried it yet. So, yeah, I tend to just run Sen Ward. It's another great, you know, heal for my tank. You don't have to put it on your tank. You can put it on whoever needs, you know, a lot of pumping in certain times, but I tend to just use it on my tank at most times. I run Renewal. A lot of people run Wild Charge so that they can get out of things more, but I value the heal. Because this is 30% of your max health, so like if you randomly almost get a one shot, it's a fantastic spell. It's instant heal, no cast time. It kind of saves my ass most times, so I always run this. Maybe I'd run Wild Charge. I have run Wild Charge in the past, but if you're new and you know you're trying to learn the dungeons, I'd suggest running Renewal. This one's personal preference. I prefer Feral Affinity, but I talked a lot in this video about the difference, so I'm currently Balance Affinity, just so I can have Typhoon. But either of these is fine. It just depends what kind of player you are in my opinion. Now this tree, if you want an extra stun, you could run Mighty Bash, but I prefer Heart of the Wild because it means every boss fight I can absolutely pump for 45 seconds, which I love. So I wouldn't consider running either of these. Heart of the Wild's like easy choice for me. So, you know, I guess it's again personal preference, but I think this one is definitely the best. In this row, I only run Cultivation or Soul of the Forest. Cultivation I tend to run in pug keys that are kind of just chill keys where I don't have to worry about anything. Any high key I tend to run Soul of the Forest. So like for instance, like KR, the first boss of KR is pretty brutal. So like when I Swift Mend, my next regrowth is particularly strong. So in most of my high keys, or if my tank is a little bit squishy, excuse me, I tend to run Soul of the Forest because that regrowth that you get, or even wild growth, after your Swift Mended is so strong. Like that Wild Growth is incredibly strong AoE healing, and the Regrowth is like an incredibly strong single target heal. So either of these is fine. It's more personal preference, but in all of my hierarchies, I tend to always run Soul of the Forest. This tree, Spring Blossoms, is kind of the only option, really. Yeah. And when you put down your Efflo, it just means that they're healed for an additional 176 healing over 6 seconds. So that one's kind of... I don't know. That's like the only one in this tree that most people tend to run. And then the final tree, I run Photosynthesis. I messed around with Germination in pre-patch, and it did so much healing. Like, it quite literally blew my mind. I had double regrowth. Double rejuve. And like a 24 Waycrest, I think it was. And like rejuve and then Germination rejuve were my top 2 heals. And I felt like I didn't heal with anything else. Like, this felt so strong. But then again, I tend to just stick with Photosynthesis so that all my heals heal 20% faster. And I like using Life Bloom on my tank, so... Germination is interesting. I've been testing it a little bit and I've been kind of impressed with it, but I don't suggest running it. I've just been kind of messing around with it recently. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have on Resto Druid. I will probably link this week horror that I made in my Discord channel if anybody's interested. But yeah, that's about it. Sorry, I totally didn't think about the fact I hadn't talked about the talents in the middle there, but I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day or night, and I will see you in Shadowlands.